a metaphor for playing pinball. I think it can be similar to playing a musical instrument. Playing a musical instrument, there's a feeling of timing that's very important. You know, there's a rhythm, and if you're playing a game, you need to be, you know, you kind of feel like you're moving along with a tempo, the same way that, you know, if I'm playing piano or something, you can lose the beat. And that I think is similar to pinball. You've got to stay with the momentum of the game. You know, you can't just sit there and like, I'm just gonna take a breather right now. Like, you're very much part of a moving thing, and I think that's similar to music. You're also working on manipulating controls to operate and to produce something else. So there's an interface there, you know, the mechanism by which you're manipulating this system. That's similarly something, an interface you have to work with when playing a musical instrument.
You are directing a play. Not a movie, but a play, because directing a movie could be playing any video game. But when you're playing pinball, you are in charge of the direction the ball takes almost all the time. And so it's as if you have players, the scene, the audience. You have all those facets going on at once.
I guess you could almost like say it's kind of like life in some respects too. You can have plans that you are going to try and implement and do your best to get to particular parts, and then you've got that opportunity that's there in front of you, that jackpot is lit or that particular shot's lit, and you have to hit that shot. And when you hit it and you've capitalized on that opportunity, it feels great. Or you miss the shot and drain and you just miss it and you feel bad about yourself, but then you get back up and try it again. So it's kind of like life in that regard. It's also like life in that, you know, there's a set time period. You only have 3 balls to do as much as you can, and in that time period, you can do really well and score a lot of points or get a lot of things done, or you could do nothing and play a terrible game, and that's all you get.
The first time I remember playing pinball, I was about 4 or 5 years old. I was with my mother and my brother in Indianapolis on an army base, and we were in kind of a cafeteria setting, and they had a jukebox and pinball machines, and I just remember wanting to play the machine, and there was one of the army guys there who saw me interested in it, and he brought a chair over and I stood on it, and of course I got the coins to play, and he helped me understand the flippers.
Well, the first time that I remember playing pinball was at Pepito's, a Mexican restaurant, a really seedy place in Dayton, Ohio, where I grew up, and going there as a kid, and when my parents would order food, me and my brother would play on the Indiana Jones pinball machine until food came.
I think there was a pinball machine down the street from my parents' house when I was a kid, and it was it was a fun little novelty thing, but I guess I didn't get it for a long time, and it wasn't until actually just recently when Mainstreet Amusements opened up down the street that I realized that I actually liked pinball. When I walked into that place for the first time, it was just kind of really unique, all the sounds going off. It was unlike anything I've ever kind of experienced. But once I started actually playing the games, and I realized that there was rules to the game, and that there was objectives and things that you could do, and ways that you could strategize your play to maximize your points. That's when it really hooked me.
This is about 1974 or 75, and in those days everyone had an understanding that to play pinball you had a coin drop. So, whether you were collecting the dimes and quarters from the paper route or whatever to play pinball, there was never a free game. You drop a coin, you play the game. Well, there was a time when someone learned to tamper with the machines and remove the front plate of glass to get free games. You could literally use your finger and adjust the game counter. The fact of the matter is, the game lost its appeal. Instead of concentrating on each ball of every game, it was as if, oh well, we will have another game to play because it's free.
So my uncle lives in town here, and when I first came to Purdue, I was very excited. They had 7 pinball machines in the basement of the student union, and that was a regular thing. You know, he was finishing up a master's degree at Purdue, and I was starting out on my PhD, and he would just text me, hey, I'm on campus, play a couple games. So I'd go over to the Purdue Union, we'd play some games, and it was, a lot of fun. He has this, sort of paternal attitude toward me, which meant he was paying for a lot of the games. He'd be like, you're poor, here, take a roll of quarters. I'd be like, yes. I think it's particularly difficult as a male to find activities to do with other men when you aren't already really well acquainted. It's a great thing having a pinball machine at my house. I can have some guys over that I don't know that well. We're becoming friends, and we can play some pinball together, and it's a way to have a good time. But it's different than turning on the TV, because I think that gets in between you interacting with each other. Pinball doesn't really stop you from interacting with the people you're playing with.
So I'd say I play pinball about every day. How much per day, is going to depend, but I'll come home from work and I'll play for a little bit online.
I play pinball at least once a week. I play in the league in town, so I know that sounds like I'm pinball obsessed to say I'm in a pinball league, but it's just a group of people that get together and play in a tournament over the course of a semester. So at least every week I go do that. But I own a pinball machine, so I'll have any time in the evening that I want to, I can play a game of pinball.
I play about once a week. Pinball kind of vanished with the onset of video games, and so it wasn't as readily available as it was years ago, decades ago for sure. Whether, pinball was in the convenience stores, it was in the bowling alleys, it was, anywhere where kids might congregate.
What I really like is that, a pinball machine is something that it's fun to find the pinball machines in town, and in Athens, Ohio, where I went to undergrad, I knew, there are like 7 machines, and then you'd hear at a party someone be like, oh yeah, you didn't know that, this pizza place has a pinball machine? You'd be like, no way, yeah, they got the, and you go on a trip with your friends to go play that machine. I know it sounds like the nerdiest thing in the world, but it's fun to have, to seek out a pinball machine. It's like if you hear a song you really like on the radio, it's more exciting than if you put it on.
I think that's one of the funnest parts about pinball is the mechanical nature of it. The way that the machines work is a lot of fun to me, figuring out how they do particular things, and some of the tricks that they do are really ingenious when you actually look at the mechanics of it, and when it's actually involved in the gameplay, you can't help but feel a little sense of wonder involved with how the ball is being manipulated in particular ways by the mechanical nature of it. And it just wouldn't, for some reason, whenever I play digital pinball or things like that, which they do replications of existing machines, it just doesn't have the same level of excitement to it. That mechanical nature, I think, really makes it real, makes it personal for some reason.
Pinball obviously is very different from other video games. It has this very mechanical, physical component, and I think people that like pinball, that's what they like about it. Well, it's laws of physics, right? There's the ball is doing things that if you thought about it, you could predict. It's but you play a video game and you're like, how do I know this thing isn't just killing me after the 3rd level every single time because that's what it's programmed to do and I can't actually do anything about it. Maybe this level is unbeatable or something like that. I like the idea that you've got pinball is, in a way bounded by the physical world. There's only so much you can do with a pinball machine because it has to happen physically. That also makes it all the more amazing when there are very cool mechanisms in a particular pinball machine.
Most of my friends are also psychologists, and so every time we play pinball, we go into the arcade or here, and we will think out loud. There's got to be an experiment in something like this somewhere. We're all cognitive psychologists, so we're thinking about, you know, how do we process the balls moving around on the board, and tracking multiple objects moving in space and trying to maintain attention. There's a lot of psychological things going on when you're playing pinball. Whether or not I'm going to play a good game and get that rush, that feeling it's completely random and I can't predict it, and that's a very potent sort of learning schedule. And so that's one of the reasons why I think I've become so attached to it, because it's got this random reinforcement schedule.
One of the very interesting factors of playing pinball is the actual tilt of the playing field. The higher it's tilted, the faster the ball. So the older machines that have a lower angle, they tend to be slower, but that can add your time on the machine and to your adding to your ability to direct the ball where you want it to go. Well, what I'm seeing is a resurgence of the old school lower pitched playing fields, because there was a time in the 80s, let's say, or the 90s, where all the playing fields were really steep so that they could get rotation and get more coin drops. But we're seeing a comeback on the lesser angled playing fields.
I've met a few pinball designers, and the process of designing a pinball is very interesting. You'd be surprised to what degree it matters in millimeters where particular components are placed on the playfield, because what makes a good machine versus a bad machine is very dependent on what kinds of shots are available to you. They've got to be the right kind of challenging but also doable. You know, what makes a particular pinball machine so much fun? Why do, you know, time and time again you have you know, Medieval Madness, Twilight Zone, Addams Family, Funhouse, some of these machines that are just unanimously regarded as great pinball machines. The Addams Family, by the way, is the best-selling pinball machine of all time. And so there's a whole question of why that machine? And it ultimately, I think, comes down to gameplay and the layout and what, you know, kinds of things are available to you as a player to do and how difficult are they.
I ask one thing of all the pinball arcade owners and pinball machine manufacturers: please, let's not get into accepting dollar bills into the machines. Let's keep it tokens. There's something disheartening when I remember pinball being either a nickel or a dime for a play, or 3 plays for a quarter, and then it's become a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters. I wish that we could find an end to the exponentially rising cost of playing a game that may only take 1 minute.
I went to the Tippecanoe Mall here in Lafayette, Indiana, where I'm going to school, and they've got a couple pinball machines there, and they don't work. So you put your money in, and you like plunge the ball, and then you realize the flipper doesn't work, or something. Or maybe you're playing a pinball somewhere, and the ball gets stuck. There's nobody to help you. You're like, you know, I'd say like a good 75% of the pinball machines you find on location have major problems with them. And it's frustrating that the people at the bar, for instance, don't care because people keep putting money in. Portland, Oregon, for instance, is a pinball mecca, and the reason is because there was a large group of people that really liked pinball there, and it was large enough that they made a significant impact on the bars. So they sort of banded together and told bars like, hey, if you have pinball and it works, we will come to your bar. And it was powerful enough that, you know, virtually every bar in Portland, Oregon has 4 pinball machines. And they're in very good shape because they know the people that fill up that bar care. So this is a machine that I got from a guy named John Carniello up in northern Indiana. And it's Time Zone, which is the 2-player version of a game called Space Time by Bally. And so this is 1973 when this is made. But the guy who I got it from fully restored the entire thing. He gave me the original back glass and it was all deteriorated, but he took a digital picture of it and then got on Photoshop and completely redesigned, made the entire thing, got silkscreen printed on several layers of glass. And so I have this pristine back glass. This is sort of 70s time travel kind of theme. You've got dinosaurs up here and Aztecs and the futuristic city. So, but you know, I like especially that it's not a very linear plot kind of thing. It's not based on a movie that you know or a story you're familiar with. It's kind of, what is it about? I don't know. You tell me. You know, there are a lot of strategies that go into playing individual games, and it's different for every game. In this game, you've got this time tunnel that sort of is the focus of the whole design. And so you've got this light cycling down through different levels of different point values. The goal then is to stop the light on the highest possible point value, and there are different switches on the playfield that'll stop that. And then once you've stopped the light, you want to hit other switches that say collect tunnel. You've got all of the inner workings in the pinball machine that can basically open up like the hood of a car. Now this is 1973, right? So we don't have any computers, we don't have any microcontrollers or anything like that. Every single thing on this machine is operated just with the technology of solenoids and then these discs with different notches in them to make different electrical connections as they rotate throughout the course of the game. Add lights in and that's the entire game. All the sounds here are entirely mechanical as well. You don't have recorded sounds or speakers, and you just have these different chimes that play when these little solenoids fire and the hammers hit these tines. That almost kind of makes it more pleasant as a living room activity, that you have this very organic bling, 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 instead of you know, or whatever the heck kind of like shredding guitar you have in some sort of modern pinball machines. So literally the way these lights are cycling through is just through this wheel turning here and making different connections. A pinball, I don't know, it's just a ball bearing, literally. It's a steel ball bearing. You don't even buy it from Pinball People. You just go online to some you know, supply website with hardware, buy a ball bearing of the right dimensions, and that's all a pinball really is.
This is Bram Stoker's Dracula. One of the reasons that I wanted this game in particular is that it's very unique in terms of the theme of it. It's a horror-themed pinball machine, which is pretty rare. There's probably only like 8 horror-themed pinball machines of all the pinball machines ever made. There's 3 different multi-ball features in this, and each multi-ball feature that you get going doubles the value of the jackpot. So if you can get 3 multi-ball features going at one time, you get 3 times the jackpot value. It adds this element to it of you've got to not just get the multi-ball features going, but you have to time it right so they all get going at the same time. One of the cooler parts of the game too is it's got this missed multi-ball feature. So there's actually a magnet under the playfield, and what it does is it drags a ball across the board. First thing you want to do is get the balls out, because when you lift up the playfield, they can go flying out. These things are, well, quite heavy. And they're like flying around at like 100 miles an hour, and these are just like little plastic pieces, and for some reason it doesn't break anything. Okay, so this is the Underside of Dracula. This is the magnet feature that moves across the playfield right here. So this is a little electronic motor, and it moves across the playfield, and the magnet gets energized and carries the ball across. When I first opened up a pinball machine, I was like completely kind of overwhelmed by just the amount of wires and things like that are going on, but it's actually not as complicated as you would think it is, as it looks. A lot of the mechanical features are very simple. These electric coils, the magnetic coils, they just enter, I mean, these are just a spool essentially wrapped in wires, and it just energizes the spool and makes a magnetic field, and it just draws the thing up, and these are the flippers right here, and all this thing does, it gets energized, and boom. They're a lot of fun to work on. I like tinkering around with them. I've learned a lot about electronics just from owning one. I'm not, an engineer or an electrical person or anything like that, but just owning one and learning how to fix things, I've learned a lot about electrical theory and how things work. So this thing right here is the tilt bob, which I never really understood how the machine knew that you were tilting it too much. So when you move the machine around, this little bobber, it'll hit the outsides of it, and that's how it knows when you are playing too rough. So you can, adjust this so the bobber goes up or down, and it makes the game more sensitive to tilting.
I've thought a lot about why is it that it's mostly men that play pinball. I don't think it's unique to pinball. I think if you take games in general, video games, any games really, board games, for whatever reason, men like games more than women. Is that because, is it because the women innately don't like games as much, or is it because society is structured such that women don't feel, aren't raised in a way that compels them to be interested in games? Or do men just mature slower? That's definitely true, but there's no answer, I don't think. But it's definitely true that you've got white males who play pinball, and it's a pretty uniform group. I don't know if that stems from those are the kinds of people that go to bars and bowling alleys, and that's where pinball machines traditionally have been located over the past 10 or 15 years.
I do know why more men than women play pinball. It starts at a younger age. Boys are really attracted to the sights and sounds and the coin drop and winning games and winning and beating your friends. It's a very competitive game. Women tend not to be attracted to super competitive areas.
I participate in a lot of pinball forums online, and they're almost all males. It seems like a lot of kind of like nerdy activities seem to be dominated by men. I'm not quite sure what the reason is behind that. I will say that I did have a party a couple days ago, and I had the pinball machine on, and there was a lot, everybody was playing it. It was mostly all women that were going up to it and playing it. So playing it and I guess getting really involved in it are probably two different things, because most of my female friends, they enjoy playing pinball a lot. I think there's just a difference in whether or not you're ready to like take it to that next level and buy a pinball machine and put it into your living room. I guess it takes a male brain to want to actually do that.
Pinball is female. Let's get this straight. Pinball speaks to you. Pinball is hands-on. Pinball reacts to you. I would say, like a lot of American boys, you give your automobile, they're gender feminine also. So I would say because you elicit a reaction from the machine, certainly she's a female. When we get back to childhood, what's more important than a mother? And I think that we're all driven to things motherly. And those are the attributes, it's not just the hot girlfriend, but it's always about feedback, positive feedback. And so I think even for a woman or a girl to play pinball, it's more about getting that positive feedback.
I don't like go to my pinball machine and be like, this is my girl here. I don't have a name for it or anything like that. I think pinball has no gender.
I think it's weird that in other languages you have gendered words, that I have a male noun. I guess no, I don't think pinball has a gender.
The communal aspect of pinball is kind of interesting because, as I mentioned before, it's kind of an isolated thing, and you're really trying to get yourself in the zone, and you're the one that's playing this game. And even when you're playing in a 4-player game or a multiplayer game and you're playing against other people, you know, you have the objective of beating that person's score, but you're not directly facing them. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you get into an arcade where you're just, instead of competing against people, it feels like sometimes when I'm, you know, playing in leagues with other people, it's you play your ball and then they play their ball and then you're sitting around waiting for somebody else to play, and you're just talking with them about, you know, what they did. Or like, you know, like you banged the thing when it was coming off the orbit over there and you're able to control it. And it's really not so much like you're playing against this person, it's like you guys are just comrades, both playing this game and sharing tips and now and again.
You know, you're playing a game, a pinball game, and you can ask the guy who's playing after you, wait, what's the skill shot on this? Would you have any tips about this? What is your competitor? But you can straight up ask him, like, you've played this way, this is your favorite, what can you tell me about, how can I do better on this? Playing an arcade is especially fun because, for instance, if you get an extra, like a replay, there's a sound that the machine makes when you get that replay. In old machines, it's a solenoid that fires against the wood box that has, you know, that is the machine. So it's just knocking on wood like a loud crack. And modern machines have a loud sound that replicates that, and it's way louder than anything else on the machine. So you're playing in a crowded arcade, everybody knows that you got a replay. There's a casual sense of competitiveness, but at the end of the day, it's both of you versus the machine. You never look to compare the two scores at the end, and you know, except just to like laugh about it or something. You know, the real point is like, this darn machine, it's fighting against me. It's, you know, that's the competitor, that's the antagonist.
When I'm playing pinball, it's me against the machine, and I understand that. But there's more to it. You are playing against everyone who's ever played that machine. You're also playing against that original person or team of people who designed that machine.
Part of the challenge of pinball is keeping yourself psychologically isolated. You know, things can distract you that are good. The way that pinball just works is that at any moment the ball's going to do something random and weird, and if you're not paying attention to it, you're going to miss it. So the machine doesn't really do anything. Sometimes you feel like the machine takes on some kind of personality and you're like fighting it somehow, but in reality it's nothing but you, and so really it's yourself that you're fighting in the game of pinball.
There's this sensory experience where you've got this fully contained world. Like beneath that glass, that's, you can't touch it except through this, you know, these two flippers.
When I've finished playing a game of pinball, it seems like I've left this world for a little while. That in and of itself is what is the greatest thing with pinball. Some people read books, some people go to the movies. But when you're into the game, you are lost in it. You know, it's not the high scores. I always like the sound of the knocker when you get a free game. Sure, it's nice to put your initials up when you've done exceedingly well, but in the end, the best part of playing pinball is just losing yourself to the game.
Whenever I'm playing and you have that particularly good game where you're just hitting every shot that you need to hit and you're setting yourself up, and you know, you finally lit that jackpot that's taken like forever to get to, and you had to hit all these other shots before it, and then at that moment it's there, and then you hit that shot. It's like, it's a feeling it's hard to even describe. It's an adrenaline rush. Your heart will start beating, and it's fantastic. It's absolutely addictive. And when that, you know, that first happened, that's when I was totally hooked on pinball.
I don't want it to become a competitive thing that I take seriously. You know, I like the idea that I go home and I tell my girlfriend, oh, I had a rough night at pinball tonight. She kind of laughs and, oh, you know, I knew I was dating a nerd. I mean, if you complain to somebody about something not going well and they can't even take you seriously, I like that. Because I've got enough challenging things in my life that are genuinely difficult. You know, I like even playing sports. Somehow it's socially acceptable to take it very seriously. And I like that it's just not socially acceptable to take pinball that seriously. And so it frees me from the obligation to do so. It's just purely fun.